Did this little orange, horrible comb over man called President Trump just win a trade deal with Canada? Or did he only move the deadline 3 days? The 50% tariffs that were supposed to begin this morning did not start. That means no immediate new duty on the targeted Canadian goods, but the threat is still alive. And if we have learned nothing else about President Trump, that those threats seem to never stop coming. And the new deadline is now Saturday, August the 22nd at 12:01 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Stay tuned. I almost didn't post this, but the official White House proclamation is clear. It deletes the August 19th deadline as the effective date and replaces it with the August 22nd deadline. President Trump says the United States and Canada have a deal, subject to finalizing documents. The legal document says Canada expressed a commitment to remove the measures the administration considers discriminatory. That is progress, but it's not the same thing as a final agreement the public can read. Here is the contradiction that many people can't believe. Trump announced a deal. The Canadian Prime Minister, Mark Carney, said substantial progress had been made, but the important work still remains. Those statements can fit together if the leaders reach a political understanding, and lawyers are still writing the details. But until the text is released, we cannot and we do not know the exact concessions, the deadlines, the enforcement rules, or whether the 50% tariffs disappear permanently or not. What we know for certain is a narrower version of that. The tariffs are paused for 3 days. And you better stock up now, folks, because you never know what's going to happen with President Trump. So what exactly did Canada agree to? That's the real question. So let me tell you, did Ottawa promise to reopen access for American alcohol, dairy products, and automobiles? Did Washington agree to remove other tariffs? Is this an interim agreement or merely time to keep negotiating? And if the documents are not finished by Saturday morning, does Trump activate the 50%, extend the pause, or declare another breakthrough? So here is the explanation on how we got here in the first place. The original plan from the U.S. of the 50% tariffs against Canada was used in 3 different proclamations issued on July the 20th under Section 338 of the Tariff Act of 1930. The administration alleged that Canada discriminated against American commerce involving alcoholic beverages, dairy products, and motor vehicles. The proclamations imposed additional duties of 50%, a whopping 50% on listed Canadian products. The August 18th proclamation does not erase those findings. It does not withdraw the product list. It does not announce a permanent exemption. It, however, changes the effective date and orders federal agencies to suspend collection during the 3-day window. That distinction does matter. Pause, okay? Pause is the accurate term. Counseled is not, at least not yet. Threatened duties cover about $20 billion in Canadian imports, roughly 5% of Canadian exports to the United States. The list includes goods such as wine, dairy products, furniture, cement, hockey equipment, clothing, machinery, electrical equipment, and other industrial and consumer products. This is not a 50% tariff on everything Canada sells us, but for a business importing a covered product, the rate is enormous, ginormous. The U.S. importer is the party responsible for paying the duty at the border. That cost can be absorbed or pushed back onto Canadian suppliers or passed on to the American consumers, of which we already hate. So the pause avoided an immediate shock for importers, retailers, builders, restaurants, and manufacturers with shipments already moving. Does Canada have a powerful reason to negotiate? Statistics Canada, which is the Canadians' national statistical agency, says 71.7% of its merchandise exports went to the United States in 2025. Losing access to the American market is not a threat. It's a kick in the balls. But the United States also had reasons to avoid the cliff. Canada threatened retaliation. American companies depend on integrated North American supply chains, and voters are already sensitive to the cost of living ahead of midterm elections here in the United States. A tariff can pressure a foreign supplier and still raise costs at home. That is why both governments had an incentive to find an off-ramp without publicly admitting retreat. Trump can say the tariff threat produced movement. Carney can say Canada prevented the duties while protecting its own negotiating position. Now, have you even considered the biggest contradiction as of yet? The United States and Canada already have a trade agreement, right? We all know this. It's called the USMCA, better known as the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement. Say that with popcorn in your mouth. That was negotiated and signed during Trump's first term. Yet the administration used a nearly century-old statute to threaten with a 50% duty against its treaty partner, including some other covered goods that could otherwise qualify for preferential treatment. Now, supporters call that leverage. Now, what do you think the critics call it? The critics call it instability. I call it some real BS. Both sides have legitimate complaints. Canada protects sensitive sectors in its economy and has imposed countermeasures. The United States can challenge discriminatory treatment. But when businesses cannot tell whether the rules will change 2 hours before a deadline, uncertainty becomes a cost even when the tariffs never starts. Both sides of the leadership aisle need to stop this crap fast. They're playing games with people's lives, money, time, livelihoods, and that's not okay. A real agreement should answer 5 basic questions. And let's start off with this. First, what Canadian barriers are being removed? Second, on what date do these changes take effect? Third, what American tariffs and restrictions are being suspended or canceled in return? Fourth, how will violations be measured and enforced? And fifth, but not least, is the 50% tariff terminated, simply held in reserve? If the final documents answer those basic questions of this whole trade deal war, Trump can argue that the threat created concrete market access for American producers. If the deadline keeps moving without public terms, then the deal, quote unquote, is still a negotiating headline with no real progress. So do you believe the Republicans should not declare a total victory before seeing the agreement of the 50% tariff hike on Canada? Democrats should not call the pause a surrender if Canada made real concessions. The correct test is evidence. Did American farmers, beverage producers, and automakers gain access they did not have before in Canada with their products? That is the real question. Or did the administration avoid new costs for U.S. importers and consumers? Are the rules durable enough for businesses to plan investments? And were the concessions worth the retaliation risks and uncertainty created by the entire threat in the first place? A tough announcement is not a result. The result is what changes after the cameras leave and the dust settles. Here is the honest conclusion. Trump's tariff threat appears to have produced enough movement for both countries to step back from the August 19th deadline that prevented an immediate 50% duty on the targeted goods, which is good news for businesses and consumers facing the cost. But the proclamation provides a 3-day suspension, not a final trade agreement. I'm not sure what you are supposed to get done in 3 days, but we will see. Until the documents are released, nobody should claim that Canada completely surrendered, that the tariffs are permanently gone, or that the dispute is over. The next deadline is August the 22nd at 12:01 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Read the final text from the deal, measure the concessions, then decide who won. Next, watch my original breakdown explaining who actually pays a tariff and why a tax aimed at Canada can still reach the American wallet. Click the video now. This is Money in Politics Simplified, and I'm Esco Latimer. Stay informed, stay engaged, because when you understand the money, my friends, well, you understand politics. Have a good day. Esco Latimer. Talking money, talking power. Follow the paper and you find a throne. Deals in the bag while the
cameras roll? Who's funding fear? Who's buying hope? Who's pulling strings every time we vote?